very frustrating moments for me.
The left behind moments.
This is the rapture text. There is only one. The word rapture does not occur in Scripture. This is a word that theologians have come up with, mainly in the 19th century, in England and America. And there's an entire kind of theological viewpoint, worldview, built upon this one text primarily, that has this idea Jesus is going to come back, and then people are going to be like, woo, either disappearing or floating up, and then it's going to be terrible for those left behind, like this book, series. Well, first, what I want you to hear is Paul's purpose of this writing is comfort.
Yes.
If he wanted to describe the mechanics of what's going to happen, he does a bad job.
Yeah.
Because he spends almost all of the text talking about the dead brother and the sense of community that's going to exist, and just has this few little lines, about everyone raising up. If he wanted to talk about that, I would hope he would spend all of his time saying, "Wow, first it's going to be like this." I would also assume if this is Paul's biggest point, you would hear about it in the other letters.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a theme that he just drops like a hot rock, which is what really occurs. The thing that I think bothers me most, I've heard one person recently tell me that when she was a girl, she was made to watch a movie at church where people just disappeared, and it was meant to frighten her. And kind of terrify her into, believing what they were supposed to, what she was supposed to believe, and she says it's still, as an adult, this image is still with her, and I think that really, for me, is what rapture theology largely is about: fear. I think, and I think the purpose of this text is one where Paul's trying to be loving and trying to say, keep going about the good work that you're doing, knowing and hoping that your brother's going to be with you, not, terrified and shaking.
Yeah.
But then what this theology does is kind of promote a culture of fear where you don't want to be left behind.
Yeah. It feels like it goes hand in hand with that brimstone and hellfire, like scaring you into heaven, and this is scaring you into not being left behind. And, there's tons of groups founded on it's called millennialism, or parts of it, and for me, there's nothing wrong with those groups, it's fine, but for me it feels like they've had a hybrid of this one tiny passage in 1 Thessalonians, a very literal reading of the book of Revelation, and then some Michael Bay special effects.
Yeah.
That make it like meteors coming down and crashing people.
I don't like Transformers.
It feels like
sweet.
It feels like Transformers meets the Bible, or parts and cut up pieces of the Bible in this very scary, it's just scary.
And again, I mean, on a very narrow reading where we pick out basically this one text in Paul here, ignoring a lot of what else he has to say.
Yeah.
And I think, this is where I would want to read widely. And if you're going to build your theology, build it on several texts.
And let's just go into the next one.
Yep.
Just read the rest of 1 Thessalonians.
Yeah. So hit us with the rest of 1 Thess.
Okay, so chapter 5 is where we kind of get this counterpart that should really, like, if your anxiety wasn't calmed from the first part, it should get calmed in chapter 5, where he is saying we are children of the light through Christ, that when that day comes, you will not be in darkness, that it's going to be okay, it's like you're secure, it's fine, you're already one with Christ, you don't need to be worried about this. So, like, he's trying so hard to comfort them.
Yeah.
That I think it just proves that people, we tend to be a little skittish.
That's right, we're anxious.
We're a little anxious.
Yeah. Because
we care a lot, So I think it's just part of the human condition is to be anxious, even though our theologians and leaders can hug us and tell us it's okay all they want. We're still scared of the dark. And it's that unknowing of what's going to happen. we're just always going to be scared because there's no certainty.
So did you have words about praying?
Yes.
Oh.
So the end of First Thessalonians is about is Paul exhorting the Thessalonians.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
To pray without ceasing, which is just it's so nice. And this is where I would say, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, because Paul is actually pretty vague on the subject of prayer. And I think the Bible is actually pretty vague on what is prayer, what constitutes prayer, what does it look like, what does it contain. Like, I think we're all pretty familiar with the standard hands together, eyes closed, talk to the Lord, kind of praying. But then we get these phrases like pray without ceasing. It's like, ooh, how is that possible? And I think it really, because I have an expansionist view of everything, because that's my theological lens, it makes me think, okay, maybe the idea of what prayer is needs to be expanded. And is prayer kind of synonymous with worship? Which I kind of think it is. And so yeah, praying is worship. Like standard prayer is prayer, but then is singing hymns, is doing service, is anything that's kind of communicating, listening, preaching, reading, like are all these things prayer? Being good parents. Like I feel like a lot of times prayer is anything where you're trying to connect with God and express things to God, either because prayer, you can be joyful, it's not just asking for things.
Sounds like what I'm hearing from you is like prayer is an attitude.
Yeah.
And then whatever it is you're doing, if you kind of have this attitude, then it can be a form of prayer.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
No, I mean that's a lovely, and then there are some things that bring you into that state more easily, maybe.
Like I think about Sunday worship.
Yeah.
Is all of that whole hour should be prayerful, and full of prayer.
And not always like literal praying,
right.
speaking, but prayerful the whole.
Right. Especially when you I think a lot of times about what prayer consists of. Like there's all these formulas, like there should be adoration and thankfulness and confession, and I'm like turkey.
Wait, Nicole did a children's sermon where she asked the kids what they were thankful for, and I think it might have been my kid.
It was yours.
Who said turkey.
And then all the kids decided they also
I'm thankful for turkey too, which Thanksgiving made sense.
But it
was so funny.
It wasn't in November. It was like in April when no one's having turkey.
But you asked about Thanksgiving, and so.
Oh, because what are you thankful for?
Exactly. So,
turkey.
It was hilarious. Yeah.
And who makes the turkey? Mom.
It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it was
very prayerful.
Right, and so I think pretty much anything where you're expressing something about God is prayer.
Yeah.
And those can be physically enacted. They can be verbally expressed.
Oh, that's a great story. Abraham Heschel, who was a rabbi.
I love him.
Yeah. Oh, he came over. He was and many of his family were killed during World War II. And immigrants into this country, there was sort of a code among them that said you don't get involved in American politics. You just be grateful that you're here. And he had that side, but he was the prophets were his people. He wrote a great book on the prophets. But he could not abide, particularly like the racial injustice at the time. So even though Rabbi Heschel followed Torah, he followed the law. It was written into him. It was a part of him. Martin Luther King Jr. was doing a march, and it was going to fall on Sabbath. And Rabbi Heschel kept Sabbath, but he actually broke to go down with Martin Luther King Jr. We have a letter in which he wrote. He says it was hard for him to make that decision, but he says when we were marching, I felt like my feet were praying. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So that